The first thing I heard when I opened my eyes was the slow, rhythmic beep of a monitor, steady, stubborn, alive. Then came the sting. My ribs ached, my throat burned, and my left arm felt like someone had replaced it with lead. I was in the ICU. The accident came back in flashes, headlights, rain, the sound of my own screams swallowed by metal. But none of that hurt as much as what came next. My phone buzzed against the tray beside me. Over and over. The screen was filled with messages, our family group chat, lighting up like a Christmas tree. I half expected prayers or get well soon texts. Instead, the first thing I saw made my stomach twist. Dad. Haley's car made the news. But look, Mason's shop is blowing up. Free publicity. That's true. People are calling it the Monroe family comeback. Haley will be proud. Mason, let's keep things positive. No need to mention the accident details. My pulse spiked harder than any monitor could track. I scrolled further. Pictures of my brother posing in front of his auto shop, reporters outside, hashtags spreading. My accident, my pain had turned into his marketing campaign. The nurse came in, smiling softly. You're lucky, sweetheart. Family's been talking about you nonstop. I wanted to laugh. Not the kind that heals, the kind that breaks something deeper. Because I wasn't sure if they were talking about me, or just using me. 2 years before that hospital room, I was standing in my brother's garage, the one that used to be ours. The air smelled like burnt oil and broken promises. We'd spent months sketching designs, arguing over ideas, dreaming about opening a family business that would finally make the Monroes proud. I'd handled the branding, social media, and the eco-friendly concept that investors actually liked. Mason handled the charm. And, apparently, the betrayal. I remember holding the paperwork that proved it, the official business registration. My name was missing. He'd filed it behind my back. His name alone on every document. Haley, it's just business, he said, wiping grease from his hands, avoiding my eyes. You're overreacting. Overreacting. My voice cracked, somewhere between anger and heartbreak. You took my designs, Mason. My name. My work. You didn't even tell me. He sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Look, you're great at ideas, but investors trust me. You'd slow us down. Don't make this dramatic. Behind him, I could see our parents, Mom frowning, Dad with that quiet look that always meant don't push it. Mom spoke softly. Sweetheart, your brother's just trying to do what's best for the family. Maybe help him from the background. That sentence cut deeper than any crash ever could. The background. That's where I'd always been. My throat tightened.
No, Mom.
I'm done being invisible. I remember my hands shaking as I took off my work gloves and threw them on the counter. They landed with a dull slap, the sound of something ending. When I left that day, my grandmother caught me at the door. She pressed her old silver bracelet into my palm, thin, worn, engraved with a single word. Rise. Her eyes were steady. You've got fire, Haley. Don't let them convince you it's smoke. That night, I drove away from home for good, crying, scared, but free. I promised myself one thing as I crossed the city limits. They might forget my name now, but one day, they'd remember who really built that shop. The first few months after I left home were the hardest. I was living in a cramped apartment above a bakery, the kind that always smelled like sugar and fresh starts. The walls were thin, my savings thinner, but for the first time, my life was my own. I picked up freelance marketing work during the day and spent nights sketching out designs for something I couldn't stop thinking about: eco-friendly auto parts, built from recycled metals and biodegradable plastics. It was the same idea I'd pitched to Mason, the one he'd laughed off as too idealistic. There were nights I fell asleep at my laptop, my fingers still resting on the keyboard, and mornings where I questioned everything, whether I'd made a mistake leaving, whether independence was worth this loneliness. Then one morning I met Nora Blake, a retired engineer who ran workshops for young women in tech. She saw my sketches on a coffee-stained napkin and said, "You realize you're sitting on industry shift, right?" For the first time in months, someone didn't call my ideas cute. She called them smart. Under Nora's guidance, I learned how to patent my designs properly, how to pitch, how to protect myself. We spent long nights surrounded by blueprints, coffee cups, and laughter. The kind that healed something my family had broken. When I landed my first client, a small auto company in Nevada, I cried in the parking lot. Not out of pride, but relief. That little win turned into a ripple. Within a year, my designs were being used by several mid-sized manufacturers. But I didn't post about it. I didn't brag. To my family, I was still trying to figure things out. I let them think I was small because it gave me peace. Meanwhile, I quietly registered my company, Rise Industries, named after the word engraved on my grandmother's bracelet. The logo was simple, a phoenix made of metal shards. A reminder that even broken things could be reborn. 2 years later, I had a small team, a steady income, and a line of contracts that would have made Mason's investors drool. Sometimes I caught myself scrolling through a shop's page, watching him bask in the spotlight, his followers praising his innovation. It used to make my stomach twist. Now it just made me smile. Because I knew what he didn't. The parts his shop used in their latest expansion, the ones everyone loved, they came from my company. He was building his success on mine again, only this time, I owned every piece of it. And I was patient. I didn't need revenge. Life had already started writing that story for me. The smell of disinfectant still clung to me weeks after I left the hospital. Every bruise, every stitch, every scar, a reminder of how fragile life could be. But nothing could have prepared me for the storm that followed. While I was still recovering, Rise Industries started trending. Not because of a new product launch, but because journalists discovered that Mason's shop had been using parts patented under my company's name. The same parts he'd been promoting as his original innovation. The internet did what it always does. It connected dots faster than I ever could. One headline read, "Auto shop hero or thief? Monroe family caught in ownership scandal." My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emails from reporters. Messages from old clients. Even Nora called, her voice somewhere between outrage and pride. "Haley, it's all over the news. They're calling you the real mind behind his empire." And then came the inevitable, the family group chat. Dozens of messages flooding in. Confusion, excuses, desperate justifications. We didn't know, honey. Mason said you were partners." "Mason, can we talk before this gets worse? You're ruining both our reputations." "Dad, Haley, family business should stay private." Private. The same word they used when they erased my name 2 years ago. That's when I decided no more silence. 2 days later, they showed up at my office. It wasn't some glass skyscraper downtown, but it was mine. All clean lines, soft lighting, plants by the window, and the faint hum of quiet success. Awards lined the shelves. A framed quote hung behind my desk. "Rise, no matter who tries to bury you." When my family walked in, they froze. Mason's eyes darted across the room, from the logo on the wall to the patent certificates framed neatly beside it. He looked small for the first time in his life. "Welcome to Rise Industries," I said, my voice calm, steady. "I believe you've used a few of our parts." Mom tried to smile, that same soft expression she used when she wanted to smooth over bad news. "Haley, sweetheart, we just came to talk." The media twisted everything. "Did they?" I asked, gesturing toward a stack of documents on my desk. "Because according to the patent office, every design your shop used these last 18 months belongs to me. I have the registration dates to prove it." Mason stepped forward, voice cracking with practiced sincerity. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We're family. You could have told me if you wanted to be included." I met his eyes, the same eyes that once looked past me. "I did tell you, Mason. 2 years ago. You just didn't listen." Silence fell. Even Mom couldn't find a word to bridge the chasm between us. Dad looked older, defeated. "What do you want from us, Haley?" I took a breath. "Nothing. I already have what I wanted, respect. And that, unfortunately, isn't something you can give me. I earned it myself." For a moment, no one moved. Then Mason whispered, "So that's it? You're just going to let my business fall apart?" I tilted my head. Your business? Mason, it was never yours. It was built on my work. If you want to rebuild it, start from scratch, like I did. They stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of machines and the scent of success that wasn't theirs. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just smiled, the kind that comes when truth finally breathes fresh air. Because for the first time in my life, the noise wasn't theirs. It was mine. They didn't leave right away. Mason lingered by the window, running his hand through his hair, pretending to think. My mother sat rigid, her purse clutched in her lap like it might shield her from the truth. Dad stayed silent, the way he always did when things got messy. I let the silence stretch, long and heavy. It was the kind of silence that made people confess. Finally, Mason broke. Haley, I messed up, okay? I should have included you. But can't we fix this together? You've got the brains, I've got the connections. We could. No, I interrupted softly. You had your chance at together. Now you'll have to earn it. His jaw tensed. Earn it? How? I stood, slow and deliberate. If you want to rebuild your shop, I'll help, but on my terms. Their eyes all turned toward me, wary and waiting. I took a deep breath. First, you'll make a public statement admitting where those designs came from. Full credit to Rise Industries and my team. Not a word about a family misunderstanding. I want the truth, unedited. Mom's lips parted. Haley, people don't need all the ugly details. We can keep it dignified. Dignity, I said, meeting her eyes, is telling the truth, even when it's ugly. She looked away. I continued. Second, Mason, if you want access to my materials, you'll do it legally. You'll license them for my company, like any other client. No special treatment. No backdoors. You'll pay fair market value, and your name will never appear without mine. He exhaled sharply, half laugh, half disbelief. So, I pay my own sister for something I helped build? You didn't build it, Mason, I said, my tone steady. You stole it. The least you can do is rent it back. He fell quiet. I turned to my parents. And as for you two, I don't want apologies. I want awareness. I want you to stop measuring your children by who shouts the loudest or smiles for the camera. You taught me that silence equals weakness, but I learned that silence can be power, too. I just chose to use mine differently. Dad's eyes softened, guilt flickering in his expression. We thought we were protecting you, Haley. I know, I said quietly. But you were really protecting the version of me that didn't exist anymore. No one spoke for a long moment. The weight of everything, years of neglect, betrayal, misunderstanding, hung thick in the air. Then, slowly, Mason nodded. I'll do it. The statement. The licensing. Whatever it takes. It wasn't humility yet, but it was a start. I offered a small smile. Good. Because this isn't about revenge, Mason. It's about repair. If you want to rebuild trust, start with integrity. Mom's eyes filled with tears. You sound so much like your grandmother. I touched the bracelet on my wrist, the silver band that started it all. She taught me to rise, I said softly. I just finally understood what she meant. They left my office that day a little smaller, a little quieter. And I felt something I hadn't in years, peace. Not the kind that comes from winning, but from finally being heard. A few months passed before I saw them again. The headlines had faded, the noise had quieted, and my scars had turned from pain to proof that I'd survived more than one kind of collision. Mason's public statement went viral. He stood outside his shop, voice shaking as he admitted the truth. The success of Monroe Auto came from my sister's innovation, not mine. I took what wasn't mine, and she had every right to take it back. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that mattered more than I expected. Soon after, he signed the licensing deal. Business-wise, it made sense. Emotionally, it was still a battlefield, but at least now, we were fighting on even ground. My parents started calling more, not with advice or guilt, just questions. How was my new prototype testing? Would I come home for dinner sometime? Small things. But they felt like stitches closing a wound that had been open for years. Nora, Ever the quiet observer, told me one afternoon, "Funny thing about justice. When it's real, it doesn't need to shout." She was right. I didn't need to gloat or post or remind anyone what I'd done. My success spoke fluently in silence. One Friday evening, I stood by my office window as the sunset spilled amber light across the city. The faint reflection of my grandmother's bracelet shimmered on the glass. It caught the light the same way it had the day she gave it to me. I traced my thumb over the engraved word. Rise. The past still hurt, but not in the same way. Now it was a scar I could touch without flinching. I thought about that rainy night, the accident, the betrayal, the silence, all of it leading here. I didn't just survive my crash. I survived the years that came before it. The ones that broke me quieter, slower, deeper. Behind me, my team laughed about something in the break room. The sound filled the space, my space, with warmth. And for the first time, I realized that every road I'd taken, no matter how rough, had led me here. I whispered the words aloud, almost to myself. I thought my accident broke me, but maybe it just woke everyone else up. Fade to silence.
Fade to strength.
Fade to Haley Monroe, the girl who rose.